outraged that this has happened. Of course, what happened here, I think, was probably the worst. There were a number of locations where ICE raided today. And, you know, to me, when these things happen, it sows a sense of terror in the community. It's bad enough that it happened at this location, but the way this goes and spreads throughout the community, then people are not sure where they're safe.
Vantage point that we would not have without having helicopters there in the sky. Look at this, Austin.
Mexican flags?
Mexican flags. The line of law enforcement agents there during this face-off. It appears to be a face-off.
Yeah, and it's tough to tell sometime from a distance, but it looked to be the color of the sheriff's deputies that are creating that wall there. Looks like they're trying to create a human barrier so that they cannot get on that overpass.
Well, the summer of love clearly appears to be underway in Los Angeles, as yesterday we covered the insane riots and violence that broke out in the streets after ICE and federal officials carried out a number of highly aggressive and successful, I should add, they always try to stop it, but you can't do it, successful immigration and deportation raids in the greater city of Los Angeles yesterday. But today we got some updates for you on that situation, because apparently since we last talked about this, the ICE protesters actually breached the federal facility, at least the parking lot. As you can see, this all began as they were trying to encircle the building, and notably LAPD would not show up. They would not come to help the feds after Karen Bass ordered them allegedly to stand down, trying to enforce LA's sanctuary city policy. And you got sights and sounds like this right here at the federal detention center yesterday.
I'm Giovanna Lotta. You're taking a live look at one of the protests underway in Los Angeles just a few hours after the mass immigration raids. Chris Christie is live in Air 7 with the latest. Chris.
That's right, Giovanna. It's a major protest going on about 2 hours now. Close to 1,000 people now wrapping around the detention facility between Alameda and Los Angeles Street. They started on the front steps of the federal building at 300 Los Angeles, now marching down Aliso. In the lead there is that cattle truck leading the pack as they make the turn onto Alameda Street. The strategy here is to basically encircle the detention facility, which is that building right there, where we understand there are actually some people inside of the building.
Yeah, so I'm going to guess they don't exactly have a permit. Now, I am waiting, of course, for the headline here to read mostly peaceful protests, because that's what they're going to argue. But as we showed in yesterday's video, it was far from peaceful. You had them chucking things at law enforcement. They were smashing windows. As we showed you again here today, they literally breached the parking lot of the facility and were vandalizing, spray painting all of these vehicles and stuff. A very dangerous situation. Again, in LAPD seemingly took forever, refused to actually get involved to do anything because of Karen Bass's ridiculous sanctuary city policies. Now, ever since then, okay, this is still going. Okay, the total meltdown by libs in the streets over the fact that we are enforcing U.S. immigration law in their cities. Late last night, apparently these protesters show up to Chinatown in Los Angeles, and federal agents were seen gathering in a Chinatown parking lot, prompting a confrontation with the residents. And so that is 2:42 a.m., right? Extremely late. And then apparently, as of today, you have more protesters clashing with federal agents after an ICE raid just took place in Paramount, California. So clearly, right, you see the Trump administration targeting California heavily when it comes to the mass deportations. There were some questions actually thus far. Hey, California has the highest concentration, as we all know, of illegal aliens. Why not go there? Well, ladies and gentlemen, ever since Stephen Miller and the administration have put pressure on ICE to get more deportations going, raise the quota per day, you are definitely seeing a lot more ICE activity, and that is good to see. So in today's video, those are some updates, but I want to tell you about the reaction of LA Mayor Karen Bass, Gavin Newsom, these protesters, because they continue to make themselves look like absolute fools. And again, despite their grandstanding, despite the the fact that they are literally putting federal law enforcement and, by the way, these migrants' lives and safeties in danger. None of what they are doing is actually working. So protest all you want. With that said, though, guys, do us a favor. If you enjoy our videos, make sure you hit that like button down below and subscribe to the channel if you are new. Subscribing is the best way to support our content. It's also the best way to stay up to date. Make sure you do not miss our future coverage. And with that in mind, so here you go, right? We talked about this yesterday, but you got the statement from LA Mayor Karen Bass saying, "This morning we received reports of federal immigration enforcement actions in multiple locations in Los Angeles as a mayor of a proud city of immigrants who contribute to our city in so many ways." Yeah, so many ways, guys. "I'm deeply angered by what has taken place. These tactics sow terror in our communities and disrupt basic principles of safety in our city. So the protesters, right, don't disrupt safety, but these guys do. My office is in close coordination with immigration rights community organizations. We will not stand for this." So that's all the grandstanding you heard, right? We will not stand for this. You see here the response by FBI Director Kash Patel. We will, right? We will indeed stand for this. Of course, after, Karen Bass's comments, ICE showed no signs of stopping. Again, you have Chinatown later that night. You have Paramount, California today, which I'm not sure is actually in LA County. But nonetheless, no, we are indeed right standing for this. And with that said, here is LA Mayor Karen Bass going on Telemundo, right? The Spanish channel local in Los Angeles to have an absolute meltdown over the situation where the so-called immigrants of her city, aka illegal aliens, are indeed getting deported. And yes, by the way, this is what I voted for, but take a listen.
Let me just tell you that when these things happen, we have no knowledge that they are going to happen. The federal government does not contact the mayor's office. The federal government does not contact Los Angeles Police Department. They just come in under siege and putting our communities in a situation like that. And so that is what we have to do to protect our community, is to be very closely connected. So, for example, on a community level, I know many of the organizations have a rapid response network. And frankly, that's how we found out about the raid, because community organizations reached out, contacted us, and told us that ICE was essentially chasing people through the parking lot at a Home Depot. Completely unacceptable.
La alcaldesa Bass nos dice que las autoridades federales.
So, I mean, there you have LA Mayor Karen Bass pretty straight up, encouraging the protesting and the disruption of law enforcement activity, as you are seeing, right? And of course, the big question we raised yesterday is, how do they keep getting the tips? How do these ICE raids keep getting leaked where, coincidentally, a mass mob of protesters knows exactly where ICE is going to be? Not only is that just that's not just about an issue of free speech, right? We saw on camera, you have the protesters blocking the law enforcement, trying to create a public safety danger, assaulting them, throwing things at the police, right? And what does LA Mayor Karen Bass do? She's encouraging it. According to her, right, the city of LA, on your taxpayer dollars, Los Angeles, is being utilized to aid and assist, not just like stand down, right? Not just ignore the feds, but they're actively trying to resist against the federal law's ability to actually enforce what is not only what the people voted for, but the actual laws on our books. Now, with that said, sources are apparently reporting in response to many things, the LA fires, but also this is very big here, right? These sanctuary state and city policies where they are not just not helping federal law enforcement, screw that, right? Forget even the fact that, when you have rioters outside your building, LAPD won't step in. But apparently, again, according to LA Mayor Karen Bass, that is a big admission on her part. The city of LA is actually involved with these protests and these so-called watchdog groups themselves who are leaking the information of ICE raids. Well, the Trump administration is now preparing, as you can see, a large-scale cancellation of federal funding for the state of California. Gavin Newsom is responding in a total meltdown. He is saying, quote, "Californians pay the bills for the federal government. We pay over $80 billion more in taxes than we get back. Maybe it's time to cut that off." So basically saying, that, hey, if you are not going to give us federal funding, California should stop paying taxes. Apparently, while they're at it, they're going to protest the big, beautiful bill, which includes the SALT cap that, by the way, basically benefits blue states and their taxpayers. But nonetheless, maybe that's a strong case to remove it, quite frankly. I don't know. But then again, right, what do we do about the Republicans in California? But, nonetheless, to that I say, I mean, how about you guys just lose your voting rights as well? How about we just take it back? We'll make you into a protectorate, disenfranchised California. I don't know. But so clearly, right, Gavin Newsom, not very happy. Karen Bass, very upset here. Now, let's shift here to discuss the story of David Huerta. We briefly talked about him in a footnote yesterday. But this is the leader of, I believe it's the janitors union, who got arrested yesterday. Apparently, the update here and the reason he was arrested: on Monday, he will be arraigned on federal charges after being accused of obstructing federal agents during an ICE raid, according to U.S. Attorney Bill Eslai. Heated reactions, as you can see. This was the video, by the way, of the union leader, right? So this is not actually an illegal alien. This is a union leader who apparently was trying to block ICE from getting into this facility. And oh, look at that picture. Oh, look at this guy. Okay. This is the outstanding individual, as everyone knows, who tried to get in the way of law enforcement. Yeah, actions have consequences. Nobody's above the law. Of course, the Democrats are having a massive meltdown over this, right? They're saying this is a political arrest. But as the CBP, Border Patrol, puts out right here, right? They said, quote, "Let this be clear. Anyone who assaults or impedes a law enforcement officer or agent in the performance of their duties will be arrested and swiftly prosecuted to the fullest extent of the law. Attack a cop and lifelong consequences will follow." Yeah, gee, you don't say. Just ask the labor union leader, right? But of course, they're saying, oh, this is America. Functioning democracies do not arrest union leaders. Well, what happened to nobody being above the law? But there you have it. And guys, the local media, I point that out because the local media in LA is having a complete meltdown. And I love seeing headlines like this, right? Out of KTLA, local news station out of Los Angeles, it says here, you love seeing stuff like this. It's hilarious. Okay. Loved ones are rallying together to help a Southern California father who was detained by immigration officials, leaving his pregnant wife and 2 children alone. So you hear that, right? They're trying to pull on your heartstrings. So look at I called it in yesterday's video. What did I say? You're going to see headlines about the California father, right? What did I say? Because remember Maryland father? Well, where's the Californian father? Here it is, right? Detained by immigration officials, leaving his pregnant wife and 2 children alone. But as Fox reporter Bill Malugin fact checks here, this quote unquote Southern California father is a visa overstay who is in the U.S. illegally and has had a deportation order since 1997. He appealed recently and lost, hence why he is getting deported, right? I mean, it always goes this way. Oh, Southern California father. Oh, what is he? An illegal alien who's been deported for several decades here and just had a total disregard for the law? I mean, gee, that's what happens, unfortunately, right? Apparently, he showed up to his immigration hearing, and the Trump administration's basically been saying, no more hearings. Okay, you show up, we're going to, stay your case, remove it, and deport you. And so that's also why a lot of these deportations are currently happening. Now, with that said, I also got to say, I don't see the problem, right? Why don't they all go to Bangladesh? If the family has an issue, they can go to Bangladesh too, right? As Tom Homan said, families can be deported together. You might say, oh, that's so cruel to send them to Bangladesh. Well, what's wrong with that? I thought, countries in the third world are amazing. That's what we're told, right? Remember S-hole countries? Remember that thing about Trump and how you cannot call a country a crap hole. A different word they use, but we'll say that, right? Well, I thought there's no such thing as that. Won't Bangladesh enjoy all the diversity? I mean, America's so bad. Everywhere else is an S-hole. Is not an S-hole, I should say. So what's the issue, right? Go back to Bangladesh. You'll have more economic opportunities than this racist, evil country. Of course. But, we go on here. And here is the, I think, bigger, broader story about all of it, which is objectively, despite all of these protests, despite all of the grandstanding and the court issues and all this stuff, and yes, objectively, they're trying to make life as difficult for us as possible. They're trying their damnedest, their hardest to stall the agenda, see as few deportations as possible. You've even heard some people on the Republican and conservative side being rightfully, by the way, critical of the Trump administration. They're saying mass deportations are not happening fast enough. Well, though, with some new data out of the Wall Street Journal today, maybe it's happening a lot more than we think, because the quote-unquote, guys, immigrant population, in their words, which I think we know what that really means, but nonetheless, the quote-unquote immigrant population has already fallen 773,000, almost 1 million people gone down in the first 4 months of Donald Trump's administration. Hey, I gotta say that number's not bad, considering we are trying to ramp up deportations at the moment. You know, ICE is getting their act together, it would seem, finally, despite all of that. Already, almost 1 million people have left in the first 4 months. Again, guys, this is what we voted for. These are signs of success. These are signs to keep on pushing forward despite all of the grandstanding. Now, you know, this whole past couple days, it just continues to be immigration defeat after immigration defeat for the left, because not only do we have the situation in LA where they just make themselves look idiotic and stupid, and frankly, I don't think they're doing themselves any favors politically by bringing back the summer of love. It's not 2020 anymore. This is a way different context. But on top of that, how could we also forget the fact that yesterday, Senator Chris Van Hollen and many other Democrats looked completely stupid. They had egg on their face after the so-called Maryland father, right? Transitioning here from Southern California father to Maryland father, got indicted, guess what, on charges of human trafficking and conspiracy, completely undercutting the narrative that this was some innocent family man who was wrongfully deported to an El Salvador gulag by the Trump administration.
I don't know if you're shaking your head at me or him, but the fact is he deserves due process.
You know, I suspect that Maryland Senator Chris Van Hollen, when he heard that Saint Abrego Garcia was coming back, took a shower, put on his nice suit, got on Open Table, found out what maybe party of 2 reservation they could get for tonight so they could continue the bromance they started when he went back to visit Saint Abrego in El Salvador. Look, he was not deported because he was a bad guy. He was deported because he was an illegal immigrant living in the country illegally for 14 years, who had gone through due process, who had an existing deportation order. It so happens that it turns out he may in fact well be a really, really bad person that we would not want in the country. Here are his possible outcomes. Number 1, he gets convicted of this stuff and goes to prison for a long time. Number 2, he gets acquitted and goes back to El Salvador, which is what I suspect the White House would do with him if he somehow gets out of these charges. Either way, it's what the White House said all along. There's no future where this man, the Maryland man, goes back to Maryland to live quietly in the suburbs. But
that's not the point.
But that's not the point. We definitely did not have vigils and call him the Maryland father with an autistic son and all this stuff. It was always just about due process. Yeah. That is, of course, the excuse now that Senator Chris Van Hollen is having. Today, he went on CNN to address, hey, where's the update? How are you feeling about that guy you had the margarita with and we're pretending was an amazing guy now that he's indicted on serious charges of human trafficking? And the spin of the situation, Chris Van Hollen is now saying that alleged human trafficker Kilmar Abrego Garcia should be getting an apology to Trump for what he and his family have been through. So we asked the question, right? Are Democrats really going to die on this hill? Are they really going to go out and, defend this guy now that he is indicted on charges of human trafficking? Are they going to make their political capital about this? The answer is indeed yes, because take a listen to the insanity Chris Van Hollen is now spewing in. Between Karen Bass, Gavin Newsom, there is not a single sane Democrat on the issue of immigration. And by the way, it's a big reason they will keep on losing. But nonetheless, take a listen.
You know, I will never apologize for defending the Constitution. In fact, it's the Trump administration and all his cronies who should apologize to the country for putting us through this unnecessary situation, and to Abrego Garcia for putting him through this situation and his family. All I have said from the beginning is that the Trump administration should respect the rule of law and the Constitution of the United States. So really, it's President Trump who should apologize to the country for violating his oath to the Constitution. I'm glad in this moment they're finally doing what the Supreme Court said, but they continue, Anderson, to violate the Constitution in many, many other cases.
Are you serious, right? You would think the hubris of these people. The Kilmore-Abrego Garcia indictment ought to be the moment where you just shut up. Okay, you just kind of tuck your tail between the legs and pretend like it never happened if you're not going to admit you were wrong, okay? But in the wake of this, again, he's not being extradited back to the United States because the Trump administration is finally saying, oh, sorry, you were right, Supreme Court. He's being extradited because a grand jury, not the DOJ, a grand jury of his peers, at least American peers, we should say, in Nashville, Tennessee, indicted him on charges of human trafficking. He's being returned to this country not to, walk free, not to have another margarita with you, but rather to stand trial, to be jailed, and likely to be imprisoned on those charges. By the way, it's been clearly stated, if he is not convicted even in this case, even if he gets acquitted, you know what's going to happen after that? His deportation, because guess what? There is simple grounds to do this. There is no case, as we've repeatedly said, where he returns to this country as a free man. And that is exactly the case. But I guess when you are as humiliated as Chris Van Hollen, look at his face right there, when you have to justify why did you have a margarita with this alleged human trafficker gangbanger, knowing he was already an alleged human trafficker gangbanger, well, I guess that's what we're dealing with. But nonetheless, there is the situation. Democrats continue to melt down over the ICE raids, and we continue to push harder, and we need to push harder. Okay, but these are good numbers. Things are ramping up. I know we feel like we say that all the time, but you're definitely seeing, right? More ICE raids, and the opposition is getting more fierce. Must mean we're doing something correctly there. With that said, let me know your thoughts on all of this, guys, in the comment section down below. Be sure to leave a like on this video, subscribe if you are new, and until next time, God bless and peace.